Time to catch up with the business. Aaron is with us now. We briefly touched on the story earlier. It's interesting, isn't it? Chief execs pulling out of their friendship with President Trump.
Well, in the last 24 hours, dropping like flies, some might say. Luce, good to see you. Hello there. Yep, 2 more chief executives have resigned from President Trump's manufacturing council. That's after, of course, the events in Charlottesville. The head of Intel, Under Armour, and the drugs for Merck have now all made the move. The latest is Intel's Brian Krasnich, who says there should be no hesitation in condemning hate speech. So why is corporate America speaking out? Let's find out. Chris Roebuck is visiting professor of the transformation of leadership at Cass Business School. You think you're such a regular? You think I'd know that by now, Chris? Good to see you. Hey, this is really, this is fascinating in the sense that I'm wondering, is this the corporate world now leading and maintaining the core US values, and this man is simply, President Trump is simply just following?
Well, I think it's really interesting that sort of traditionally the corporate world has followed the governmental world. But what's happening here is the corporate world normally speaks out about business issues. But we've now got to a sort of tipping point where the corporate world is saying, look, if you say something that does not conform to the values that we espouse in our organisation for ourselves, our employees, our investors and our customers around respect for others, equality, dignity, truth, etc., we will speak out and we don't care what the consequences are.
Does it make it harder then for those who are still on the council, the leaders of some big corporations, big names, does it make it harder for them to stay on this council, given the consumer will be looking, going, hang on, why are you on it? And, Intel and Under Armour, et cetera, Tesla, I mean, they've all pulled out.
Well, it depends against the standard with which they're going to judge Donald Trump. How bad is it not to have said anything about what happened in Charlottesville for 3 days? Now, they could fudge it and say, oh, well, he eventually said something. Right. But then again, that says just as much about them as it does about him.
It does indeed.
As leaders.
And those who have taken a stance, I'm wondering, do they now look, this is what's happening on soil in the United States. But these companies are global companies, and they could look at countries like China and go, China, you're not very good on human rights and free, you're controlling freedom of speech. They're not going to do the same with, they're not going to sort of all go, okay, now we've done this, we're going to pull out of China, for example.
Well, this is interesting because any form of values-based leadership has a price, because there will be people that disagree with you, and there will be people that want to do things or do business in a way that does not conform to most values that we espouse. As such, you have to pay the price. So the question is, how far are they prepared to go in terms of, as you say, freedom of speech, and to say, this government is not espousing those values, therefore we're not prepared to sell in this country. But equally it's the same, for example, with do you do trade deals between British defence manufacturers and Saudi Arabia and any number of things. So there is a price for sticking to your values. The question is, do you have the courage to do it? But then equally, if you're in the commercial world, what are the implications for your investors? And it's a playoff.
Yeah. Okay, Chris, we've got to wrap it up. But this really waters down this manufacturing council now? Or?
It waters it down, but it also poses the question, do those who lead organisations now represent the breadth of American society better than the two political parties, given that now 45% of Americans count themselves as independents, not Democrats or Republicans?
Okay. Hey, Chris, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us. Chris Roebuck there from the Cass Business School. Let's just touch on some of the other stories that are making headlines around the world. Germany